Hello there. This is Dr. Tolu Alugo from St. John Cap. Thank you for joining us again today. Remember, at St. John Cap, we aim to empower youth mental health by providing education to parents, teachers, and caregivers. Today, we're discussing a very important topic, which is substance use. And I have my good friend and colleague here who's going to be helping with this discussion. He's a psychiatrist with a lot of interest in the areas of addiction in youth. So I'm going to get him to introduce himself. Dr. Tunde Apantaku-Olajide, we're really happy to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. I'll get you to introduce yourself and then we'll kick off our discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a privilege to be part of this education program, and talk show. I practice in St. John, New Brunswick myself. I'm a pediatric psychiatrist with a special interest and expertise in substance addictions. So I see quite a lot of young people, um, ranging from the age of 14 right to about age 25, right, in the adolescent, young adult population. So this is a very timely topic, right? And I'm interested in having your questions and see how I can be of help and support. Thank you.
Great. Just to say at this point that if you're watching us live, feel free to type in your comments. Or questions. We'll try and take a couple towards the end. If you're watching a replay later on, please comment by saying #replay so we know that you caught this video. It's going to be on YouTube and on my Facebook page after this session as well. So you've mentioned that in your practice, Dr. Tunde, you see so many adolescents with substance use. And I'm wondering, we hear the term substance use disorder, substance abuse. Is there a difference between those two?
There is a difference. It's a subtle it's a subtle difference, and I will try my best to explain it in a simplified layman's language for the benefit of parents and families. Substance use or substance misuse, depending on your jurisdiction, whether it's North America or on the other side of the Atlantic, in Europe, both can be used interchangeably. They essentially mean the same thing: substance abuse and substance misuse. So the simple explanation for substance abuse, as commonly referred to in North America, um, is where an individual occasionally, or on an occasion, used the substance to a degree that they experienced unwanted or undesirable effect. Right. So, put it this way, let's just imagine that um, on an occasion I drank alcohol, right? And then I got intoxicated, right? That means I have abused the alcohol, right? That is substance abuse. Okay. Now, remember I said on an occasion, on the occasion. On the other hand, for substance use disorder, by the time you start to add in a disorder, then you're saying there is an habitual pattern of use for that individual in a dangerous or a reckless manner. All right. So the difference between the two for substance abuse likely to be on the occasion, right? Non-habitual occasional use. On the other hand, for substance use disorder, it's an habitual use in a reckless and dangerous manner. I hope that simplifies it.
Yes, that really explains it. So, in the context of teenagers, how do you draw the line? So you talk about you or an adult having alcohol and being intoxicated. versus this habitual use. But in a teenager, for example, so those who are maybe younger 18, younger than the legal age for drinking, how do you quantify that? How do
All
you
right. So
make that diagnosis?
for well, maybe not to make diagnosis, but at least to educate,
Mm-hmm.
right? For younger people, and because they are young, we've all been young. We've all gone through that phase. It's an age of experimentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're trying new things. They want to explore, right? But with substance use, marijuana, for example, or legalize nicotine vaping, um, you know, the young person could use occasionally, right? The young person could you on the occasion that he uses, maybe in a party context, for example, right? He took more, or he took an amount that he wasn't expecting, and then he had an unexpected reaction,
Right.
right? So that means it's used, right? But it has constituted into an abuse of that substance, right? Because of the unexpected, undesirable effect that he had on that particular individual.
Okay. So, how young are you seeing people getting into substance abuse? How early is that happening in your
The
experience?
From a remote memory, right? I think the youngest I have heard is about 9 year old.
Okay.
That
The
that
youngest that
is
you've
that is the
seen,
youngest I've
the
heard. That
youngest that
that
you,
was the age of his first, his or her. I cannot remember the gender.
okay.
His or her first exposure. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was the age of the first trial.
Okay. And this is a patient that you saw, or an individual that you saw that told you that the first time they tried substances was age 9.
Very likely.
Okay, right. Wow. And I know you've already kind of dabbled a bit into this, but what are the commonest substances in your practice that you'd see young people using?
Well, the commonest, all right, the commonest is marijuana.
Okay.
Okay. For some reason, interestingly, the the amount of alcohol use, right, has regressed and marijuana has taken over. All right. The other substance that young people use is nicotine. All right. So, and nicotine vaping or marijuana vaping. Um, the other substances, once you get out of those three, marijuana, alcohol, nicotine, then we start to get into the range of the illegal substances, right? The illegal substances, one blanket word is the psychedelics, right? So otherwise known as the MDMAs or the hallucinogens, right? And then you also have the legal highs, right? Which is a concussion of so many things together. You really don't know what it is and what is in it. And then you have other substances like ecstasies, speed,
Hmm.
right? Crystal meth, that is another one that is pretty very common, right? In the younger population, below the age of majority, hardly would you find the use of cocaine or heroin. On occasions, you one would encounter non-medical use of prescription drugs, and that is where parents should be very aware. For example, those that are prescribed narcotics, right, for pain in the house. Parents should be aware that those are substances of abuse, or street abuse. Benzodiazepines, those are substances of street abuse. Stimulants, those on ADHD, psychostimulants, vivants, amphetamines, the methylphenidates, right? Those are substances, right, that they have street value. Right.
Right.
So it's a wide range, but the commonest, right, the commonest three is marijuana, whether in the form of flower or oil vaping, um, nicotine, then alcohol, and then the rest.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, really detailed explanation. I know, like me, you've kind of crossed three different continents. So, these people in Nigeria are talking about substance use in their teens. It's the same in Europe and here in North America. Do you find that there's a difference in any of those three different societies in terms of the pattern of substances that we're seeing the kids use?
Uh, I probably would say, okay, three continents, like you said. So let's use Africa,
Mm,
right? Africa as a continent, Western Europe as a continent, because Europe is one, but it's divided into two. You have the Western and the Eastern. So there are dynamics, and then America, North America, and then South America. Um, there is a subtle, right? But by and large, marijuana is common right across all board. Okay. As way back as in the 70s and the 80s, right, marijuana has been on the market, right? The prevalence, the amount of use has had continues to skyrocket, right, particularly since the 1990s, right? And we've always having an exponential growth, right? For those that are, monitoring the growth right across all three continents, right? Marijuana does stop it for young people,
mhm.
right? However, for some reason in in Europe, right, alcohol seems to be a bigger problem, right, compared to what is available in North America, right? Alcohol, because it's pretty very expensive, right, is usually not a problem in Africa, right? However, in Africa, right, the this marijuana again is expensive, right? So what has been watered down is you find codeine or opiate abuse, right? Which and solvents, right? Because they are cheap concussions that you can, put together. Those are substances that play a major role in
What do you mean
Africa.
by solvent? Sorry to interrupt. Would you mind
So
explaining that?
solvents are any liquid that has gas content to it. So for example, in Africa, some people will sniff gasoline, right, to get high. Interestingly, there was a documentary on BBC, many years ago that kids as young as 3, 4, 5 year old, right, in the shacks were sniffing glue, and snorting solvents to get high.
Okay, wow. I know that recently we've had that a lot of inhalants, people sniffing bath
Inhalants,
salts,
yeah.
glue, aerosols, and so on. So that is, there's such a wide range of opportunities to misuse substances. So I'm
Hmm.
wondering, you also talk about the socioeconomic differences where availability of money determines also what substances people are using. So that's important
Hmm.
to remember. So is this a big deal? I mean, substance use in teenagers, what's the big deal?
It is a big deal, right? And remember that the substances they are mind altering chemicals, right? And there is your mind is in the brain is in the mind, right? So the best way that I often describe it to a young individual, right, is that your brain is very fragile, right? And unlike a bone or your skin, right? That if there is a fracture or there is a laceration, things could heal. Unfortunately, with the brain, you may recover, but you may not never have a total healing, right? So with substances, you are chemically insulting and chemically injuring the brain. So you're giving yourself a chemical induced brain injury, right? In the context of maybe wanting to get high or for whatever reason that you're using. And as a result, you are, or one is altering the natural process of growth for the brain, the natural process of development, right? Which then manifest into all kinds and manner of problems later on, whether mood, emotional, learning, motivation, academic, relationship, right? Because you have altered that natural process of growth, and in some instances, you have retarded the process of growth by the chemical injury to the brain. And let me clarify or explain to people why the brain growth is very important. Between the ages of 14 and 25, that is when you're actually having the massive amount of brain growth, particularly in what we call the frontal lobe. The frontal part of the brain is like the engine power of your brain, right? That is where you attention, concentration, thinking, planning, all what we put together as executive function, right? That makes an individual function, appropriately and reasonably, and spontaneously, right? That is when the massive growth, right, occurs. That is why young people are adventurous. That's why they think they are very creative and all that. That is because that is when the brain growth process is going on. So as a result, if in the process of that fast growth, if anything comes in, right, just imagine that you're driving a very fast, you're driving a fast car, on the highway, right, and then a deer, crosses, the accident is really going to be fatal, right? The same thing goes, for when you're pouring unnecessary chemicals into the brain in that age range from 14 to 25.
Wow, wow. It just goes to show how it is important to get education, because if you don't have that understanding that this is a really critical time for brain development, and you're kind of like a physical about the exposure to substances, it
Mhm.
can have huge effects going forward that can, be difficult to manage. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, this program is really to educate parents, teachers, people that care for youth. And we always say intervention starts with prevention. So,
Hmm.
what are the preventative strategies that parents can take to reduce the risks of their children or their teenagers becoming substance abusers, substance users?
So essentially, the question you're asking me is what can a parent do,
Mm.
right?
Just before the child even starts, this is like
Before
prevention.
yeah. So how can the
Yes.
parent protect, the young person
Yes.
from going that path?
Mm.
Well, there first thing first, right? A child is likely to mirror, right, the behaviors of a parent, right? So you have genes, right? Again, the child is taking genes from the parents, nurturing, right? The child sees what the parent does and is likely to replicate that, yeah, whether intentionally or intentionally. They observe. Children are very keen observers, and their observation of the adults' behaviors and attitudes start as young as 6 or 7 months, right? So Number one is the parent should be a very good role model, right? That is the number one thing. And then number two is that a parent should be involved, in their children or their young person's life. You know, how are they doing at school, who are their teachers, who are their friends, who are their friends' parents, what are their sports, what are their organized recreational activities, right? What are their interests, right? What is their creativity, what is their personality like? So again, be involved in your young person's, your young person's life, not to the degree that you're controlling or overprotecting them, right? However, the parent should set rules and expectations, right? Over permissive parenting style, right? And inconsistent disciplinary approach, right? Again, leads to a young person more prone to risk taking, right? In dangerous, dangerous and reckless manner, right? So again, setting rules and expectations, moral rules, academic expectations, right? And again, it's not just the talk. Again, the parent has to do the same, right? So if you are asking your young person to, to behave or to adjust or to transform in a particular manner or style, then the parent should be ready to also live the lifestyle, right? So you cannot say one thing and then you do another thing and expect your young person, right, to conform. Overall, putting all this together, as parents, we need to make time, right, for our young, our young people. Um, and I hear it a lot, right? When the young people say, "Look, my parents don't understand me," right? My parents don't understand me. And usually by that time, when age 13, 14, going up to the age of 16, 17, that is when I hear that phrase the most, right? And unfortunately, what is happening is between the ages of 0 and age 12, when you are supposed to be a parent, right? You are being a friend to your child, right? No rules, no boundaries, no expectations. And then all of a sudden the child is 13, 14, right? Now they wanting to explore, and then you want to be a parent, right? It really doesn't work.
Mm.
Okay. At that age, between the age of 13 and 17, 18, right? As a parent, you are then bouncing two balls as a parent and as a friend to your child. That is where making time, comes in. By the time the child is 19, they're already an adult, right? Most of them are already living an independent life. They're already out of your home or away from under your roof anyway. So at that time, you are less of a parent, right? More of a friend and more of a mentor, right?
Mm.
For the young person now. So
Right.
making time is very important, and time waits for no individual. Before you know it, they are grown up, ready to leave.
Great. So, I mean, just to summarize what you've said, the prevention really starts with us being real good role models,
Absolutely.
talking to our kids, being involved in their lives, but ensuring healthy boundary setting,
Absolutely.
consistent parenting.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And then, so when a child then has now begun to use substances, what are the warning signs that would kind of cue a parent in that this child is beginning to dabble, possibly hiding it? What kind of things can parents look out for?
Well, not too many,
Mm.
right? And I'll probably will break it down into five. Okay. So, a, the first thing that you're probably likely to notice is that the child becomes withdrawn, right? Withdrawn from friends, withdrawn from organized recreation, recreational activity, and withdrawn from family, right? So social withdrawals from family, from friends, and from recreational activities. That's the number one thing. Number two is, by the time they withdraw, they now start to look for, or vent into other kinds of activity. So if you're beginning to observe an unusual, uncharacteristic, out of character change, right, in your young person's friends, who they hang out with, their recreational activity, um, that is another red flag. Then
Right.
the other red flag is a drastic drop or decline in their academic performance ability, right? A young person who had been an honors student above average, now is struggling to maintain those grades, or is having inconsistent grade performances right across. That is another red flag, right? Then mood or emotional instability, right, is another red flag. All of a sudden, the child or the young person is unnecessarily irritable, unnecessarily, temperamental, right, hostile, using very impulsive verbally, and using swear words, or being unnecessarily agitated, right. That is another red flag. And again, if they are consistently asking for money or borrowing money, right, or you're noticing things are missing in the house, right, um uh again, that is another red flag, that money is going, is leaking, from somewhere. And then finally, if you start to find evidence of drug paraphernalia, right, within the house, or you're missing prescription drugs, right? When we talked about prescription medications earlier on, we are missing prescription drugs from the medicine cabinet. That that those are big red flags, and it is time to have a conversation, right, with the young person. So if we look at it on those, on those approach, the child is withdrawn, change on decline in their academic performance, change in their recreational activities, or their group of friends, right, mood or emotional instability, hot tempered and agitated for no reason, right. The parent should be concerned.
Wow. This calls for parents becoming like detectives. You have to be one step ahead and keep your eyes and your ears really open. So, when a parent does discover that their child may be using substances, what
Mhm.
can they do? What can they do at that point in time?
Well, like I said, it is time to have a conversation,
Hmm.
right? And for the parent, one needs to be very strategic, right? About it, right? This is not, at that stage, it is not, a matter of argument, right, with the young person, because you don't want to win the argument and lose the battle, right, which is what happens, right. And that is why parents, young people say, my parents don't understand me,
Hmm.
right. So the first thing, right, is a parent should gather as much information about drug use, right, why young people use substances, um, you know, the parents should be knowledgeable, right? And talking about using, why the young person uses substances, basically three, right? Three broad. Number one, recreation, for fun, sensation seeking, right? That is number one. Number two, is, the young person or the individual is trying to cope with stress, right? An unpleasant experience, maybe non-pathological, but stress. Again, no one likes to experience distress, right? I don't know about you, but I don't I don't want to experience distress, right? So again, stress coping mechanisms, that is the second one. And then the third that we often miss, right, is that the young person could actually be self-medicating, right? So they're trying to manage a symptom: anxiety, depression, attention, concentration, right? Mood instability, right? So knowing, gathering all those information, will empower, your the parent to have a progressive conversation, right, with the young person. So when you have gathered those information, the next thing that the parent should, try to look out is a suitable time, right, to have the conversation where there is privacy, right, and that there's very likely to be an interruption, right? So you don't gather the family around, and ambush the young person. it's
Right.
it's a one-on-one, one-on-one conversation, right? And don't make assumptions, right? Don't make assumptions, that this is the reason why your young person, because you never know, right? There are lots of pressure, lots of dynamics that the young people are coping with, right? So you come in with an empathic mind, right, will probably help your young person to trust you and to, divulge their challenges, to you. Now, as a parent, when you intend to have this conversation with your young person, be ready, right? Be ready and be prepared for a negative reaction, right? So they may put up a front. They may get angry, they may get defensive about it, right? Again, those are signs, that something is not right.
Mm.
Okay. With those negative reactions, avoid being judgmental, right? And avoid lecturing, your young person, because they,
Right.
they are probably more knowledgeable about the substance use, or the dynamics of the substances, even more than the parent. So what you want to do, right, as a parent, is to be supportive, right, and non-confrontational, right? What you want to be as a parent is, for young person to trust you, right, and for your young person to know that you are there to support them regardless of what you find out.
Right. Okay, wow, that is so comprehensive. I mean, we overshot our time, but there are just two main things I still wanted us to talk about. At what point should a parent seek help for their child who may be using substances?
Immediately.
Okay.
The sooner the better. The earlier the better. The quicker the better,
How
right?
did they seek help? Who did they go to for help?
Well, again, your local in your local community. Number one, you this speak want be sure that your young person is ready, right, and willing, right? If your young person is not ready or willing, then you as a parent, right, then reach out to therapists, reach out to counselors, right, practicing certified therapists and counselors that are knowledgeable in substance counseling to provide you with education and information on how to be supportive, right, for your young person. So that is on the side of the parent. For the side of the young person, right, a therapist is also very important. That is individual therapy and counseling, right? But it's best to start from what exactly is the reason, what exactly is the fundamental situation that the young person is trying to approach or trying to solve or trying to deal with by using the substances. So then you go for them, because then you are now dealing with the root problem, the root of the problem, not the manifestation of the problem.
Right. Right. Wow, thank you so much. So I know we spoke about the fact that we have kids who are like under the legal age to use particular substances, but when we have kids who are over 18 and legally should be allowed, I mean, are allowed to drink. But do you have
And
any
use
words
marijuana.
use marijuana? So do you have any word of advice for parents of those kids to kind of ensure safety, to ensure that they know that the reality is these kids will probably use this stuff, but how can they ensure that they can help their young person to be safe?
Well, by the time the child, an individual, is attaining the age of majority, they're no longer a kid, you're an adult,
Yeah.
right? So at those times, that is where there can still be remedy,
Mhm.
right? But again, it's be understanding what exactly are they dealing with, be there for support, be there for counseling, be there for guidance, right? Be as a parent, be there for mentoring, and in some situations be there as a coach, right,
Right.
for your young person. Again, whichever way, be involved in their lives, right? They are adults, right? They still need you as a parent. Maybe maybe as long as that father child relate, or parent child relationship is still there, right? Your child will still need you, right? I still need my dad in certain situations. I needed my mom, in certain of blessed memory, in certain situations,
Yeah.
right? Even as a as a grown-up adult, having kids of my own, right?
Yeah.
So it is that be involved in their lives, the involvement in your children's lives, all through, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a parent, whether you're a parent to be, or your great grandparent, be involved.
Wow. This has been such a great discussion. Thank you for being so comprehensive in, discussing these issues.
You're very
So do you
welcome.
have, before I let you go, do you have any final words of advice for us? Somebody just put a comment. Any final words of advice for us before I'm going to take this comment just after your word of advice.
Right. Well, again, you cannot give what you don't have, right? They find the word of advice to parents and families is be a good role model, right? Be a good role model. What you expect your child to be, you have to cultivate that in them, right? So those that role model, a positive or good role model approach, goes a long way. Beyond that, then comes being supportive and being understanding, and ensuring that your young person finds you trustworthy and supportive.
Great. I'm just going to. So Pam just said, although my kids are late teens, early 20s, I've found this to be such an informative talk. As parents, friends of teen families, and simply as a community, this information has been presented in a way that so easily to bring into our day-to-day contact and assessments. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Pam, for your comments. We really appreciate it. So, Dr. Apantaku, thank you very much. I appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedule on a Saturday to do this. And hopefully we can invite you back again to kind of talk more about this very important area. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
joining us. If you're catching this, remember hashtag replay, share it, comment. Would like to hear your comments, like, comment, and share. Thank you very much.